Okay, everyone, I think we can go ahead and get our afternoon session started. Devin, I'll invite everyone to please come in and take their seat. Welcome everyone this afternoon to the 180th public meeting of the Board for International Food and Agricultural Development, BIFAD. My name is Mark Keenum. I am serving as chairman of the BIFAD, and I also serve as president of Mississippi State University. And I'm just honored to be able to be here to host all of you and to welcome you to this very exciting meeting that we're going to have this afternoon. And for those of you not that familiar with BIFAD, BIFAD is the Board for International Food and Agricultural Development, and it traces back to 1975. It was part of Title 12 of the Foreign Assistance Act. And BIFAD is fulfilling its mission as an advisory board to the administrator for USAID. This is a 7-member board appointed by the President of the United States, each member. And with that, we have a very distinguished board. These are individuals who give of themselves in a voluntary capacity. They're very distinguished in their own professions. And I'm just honored and humbled to be affiliated with such a distinguished board. And with that, I would like to call on my colleagues on the BIFAD board to please stand and introduce themselves.
Do you want to start, Brady?
I'm Brady Deaton, Chancellor Emeritus of the University of Missouri, agricultural economist, and been engaged in international work with mostly from a university base for many years. Thank you all for being here.
Gabisa Jetta is my name. I'm from Purdue University. For the African students sitting in the audience, I was once a student sitting on that side. Everything is possible is the example I'd like to live with you.
Good afternoon. I'm Pamela Anderson, the Director General Emerita of the International Potato Center. I spent my career in Latin America and Africa and Asia working on food security issues for 40 years and have recently come home, and I'm very proud to be serving the agency in a new way.
I'm Jim Ash. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, grew up in rural Southern California. I'm an attorney in private practice working with some of the large agricultural businesses in the United States. I was appointed to the board 4.5 years ago.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Lackey, and I chair the World Food Bank. It is a for-profit operation, but it has a benevolent mission, as you might be able to imagine. And I hail from Denver, Colorado, and I'm delighted to be here. And have had this morning was really, really fantastic, and I look forward to the afternoon being the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, this is, again, an exciting occasion for us today. This afternoon, we're going to share the findings of a new study, and each of you in your seat should see and have a copy of that. This is a study on how the United States benefits from agriculture and food security investments in developing countries. At the request of Administrator of USAID, Mark Green, BIFAD commissioned the study to understand U.S. benefits capabilities leveraged from the government's international agriculture and food security development investments. International agricultural development investments have been made across a wide range of areas. These areas of investment include agriculture research, human and institutional capacity development, productivity, nutrition, and resilience. However, a recent summary that collects a broad array of these impacts together and translates them into an accessible language has not been available. This new study and accompanying policy briefs will help inform our citizens, the executive branch, government partners, development partners, higher education community, the agriculture community, the Congress of the United States of America, of the important investments in agricultural development and how those investments directly benefit the taxpayers of the United States of America. With that, I'm honored to be able to welcome and to introduce the Administrator of USAID, Ambassador Mark Green. Mark Green was sworn in as the 18th USAID Administrator in August of 2017. Prior to joining USAID, he served as President of the International Republican Institute, and from 2007 to 2009 as the U.S. Ambassador to Tanzania. Prior to serving as U.S. Ambassador, he served 4 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Wisconsin's 8th District. While in Congress, he helped craft key policy initiatives, including the Millennium Challenge Act and President George W. Bush's history-making AIDS program. He is currently serving his 3rd term on the board of directors of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, having been appointed to that post by President Barack Obama in 2010. He has also served on the Human Freedom Advisory Council for the Bush Institute and on the board of Consensus for Development Reform. He holds a law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School and a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Administrator Mark Green.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. It's good to be with all of you here. I'll be very brief. So at USAID, I have the honor of leading more than 10,000 wonderful, dedicated professionals. As I often tell people, the great advantage of the place where I work is that everyone knows each day why they're there. Everyone comes to work with a simple mission. They want to lift lives and build communities, and they want to lift the human condition. We believe that we are an irreplaceable part of American leadership around the world. We are a projection of American values. We're also an expression of American compassion. But there's something else to it. We also believe that that role in American leadership is good for America, that it creates opportunities back here, that it doesn't just lift lives in far-off lands. It's also good for American business. It's good for communities all across this country. 2 years ago, when I came into the agency and met with something called BIFAD, I wasn't quite sure what it meant at the time, rather strange acronym, wasn't really sure. And I got a chance to meet with and work with a wonderful team of truly talented professionals leading in their field, producing the kinds of research and knowledge that has made such a difference in the food security area. And we were talking about the difference that we're making in so many parts of the world. And I said, yeah, and I also think we're producing good outcomes back here. And then we realized that it was a good thing to say, but we had not actually documented it. We had not actually done the kind of rigorous, objective analysis that would produce the information upon which we could draw that conclusion. In fact, is it good for America? And so I asked BIFAD, Mark Keenum, and others to take on this topic, and the result is the study that you have before you, and the results are quite extraordinary, even beyond what I thought. This is good for America as well as good for American foreign policy. It is good for our economy. It does help support and create jobs, and it's a wonderful way that we as a nation can do well by doing good. It is an important part of American leadership, but it's also an important part of the American economy. So these results, which we are determined, as we were talking about, to make sure that are on the desk of every single member of Congress, I think is a wonderful new step in the overall effort to help educate opinion leaders about the value of American leadership around the world. So I'm very grateful to the members of BIFAD for the work that they've done, and really looking forward to the work that we'll do together, not just to raise the awareness and push this report out, but some of the topics that we have talked about in the lunch that we just had. I think there are so many ways that we can tap into our combined experience to do even more with these programs, both benefiting those that we serve around the world, but also to accelerate American economic opportunity. So again, Thanks to all of you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you again, Ambassador Green, for your leadership, most importantly, and for helping to commission this important study that we're here to celebrate this afternoon. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. This is the individual that we turn to help make this study or this publication possible, Shenggen Fan. He is the Director General for the International Food Policy Research Institute, and he has served as the Director General for the Institute since 2009. Dr. Fan joined IFPRI in 1995 as a research fellow, conducting extensive research on pro-poor development strategies in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. He serves as a member of the lead group for the Scaling Up Nutrition Sun movement and is advisor to many national governments, including China and Vietnam. He serves as an advisor on agriculture, food security, and nutrition. Dr. Fan received a PhD in applied economics from the University of Minnesota and a bachelor and master's degree from Nanjing Agricultural University in China. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shenggen Fan.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. 35 years ago, I was like you sitting in this room. So 35 years later, so I'm ready to finish my term at IFPRI and ready to move to my new life. So I'm so proud to support BIFAD and to work with APLU in publishing this beautiful report. So I have to acknowledge one of our senior researchers, Joel Global, plus David, where's David? David and here Stephanie, for producing such a great report. So I wanted to just highlight some of the key findings from this report. So, and David and Stephanie probably will zoom in to tell you more details, more technical issues, so how United States benefited from its international development, particularly in agriculture and food security. So we know that the U.S. benefited from many different channels. And also equally important, don't forget that one of the major purposes for U.S. international agriculture development is to help the poor and hungry people in Africa, in South Asia, and Latin America. So just from the recipient countries' perspective, so these countries can benefit from improved technologies, let's say increased, let's say the capacity, policy-making capacity, national agriculture research capacity, and so on. So as a result, their productivity in food and agriculture has improved. The whole agricultural food system has been transformed. And again, in turn, all this has led to improved household income, improved nutrition and health, and improved overall economic growth in all these recipient countries. And tons of studies have demonstrated how U.S. agricultural international investment and how other countries' investment have benefited these countries. But here the highlight is how the investment countries have also benefited from these investments. So for example, the much stronger university capacity, the land-grant universities, public universities here in U.S. benefited from international agricultural investment. Now clearly, the productivity of not smallholders, actually here in U.S., it's probably large scale using the international standard. The U.S. farmers also benefited by using a lot of technologies developed by National Agriculture Research System and the CGIAR, where the IFPRI is affiliated. So then obviously the jobs, the private sector here, the food companies benefited from this investment, from exporting and not food, agriculture products. Because when the emerging economies, developing economies have much faster economic growth, they will demand more and better agricultural and food products. So the jobs is very important in terms of, let's say, exporting agriculture, food, and products. And clearly, because of this investment, we have seen reduced conflicts, reduced migration, and as a result, the countries here in US, in Canada, in Europe have become safer. So I wanted to just to go beyond a little bit from this high level to talk about how recipient countries have benefited from international agricultural investment, particularly in the area of food and nutrition security. So yes, farming technologies have improved. So we have seen many farmers improve the adoption of certain technologies, and many of these technologies are the result of collaboration between US universities, US partners, CGIAR, and beyond. And the US investment is very critical for these technologies to be adopted. And as a result, the whole agriculture food system has been transformed. This is a very key element of this report. So it's not just a small technology here and there. It's a whole food system. For example, input supply, the obvious production, processing, transportation, import, export, wholesale, retailing. So whole value chain. And if you combine all the value chains together, it's a food system. So that food system has been transformed, which means they will generate more jobs, more value addition, they will export more. Now, improved agriculture productivity obviously will increase household income, particularly smallholders' household income in many developing countries. And right now, the majority of hungry and undernourished people are smallholders in many countries. So they will spend more on food, on healthcare, and education. And again, as a result, the nutrition status of their children, of the household wives, will improve. And more efficient and effective food systems. So again, here I've emphasized food systems, and a higher household income, and a better human health and nutrition contribute to the sustainable growth of national and regional economies. So all this will also help the United States benefit from its investment. So for example, the growth of US exports and jobs from this investment. So every dollar of agriculture exports stimulates $1.87 in business activity in the United States. So you can see how big the impact is on the US business. And every $1 billion in US agriculture export supports more than 8,000 full-time jobs in the US economy. So this is not just a part-time informal job. It is full-time, it's formal jobs, good jobs that can need to support middle-class families. And the spillover of technologies. So CGIAR and the National Agricultural Research System development of natural technologies that can also spill over to US. So US farmers have adopted lots of technologies that have been generated through that system. So when I was a student, no, actually when I was young researcher, humble researcher, almost 25 years ago, I did a study to look at how US benefited from international research on rice through germplasm exchange. So I traveled by the way, to Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, California, all these major rice producing states. And you will find that majority of the rice produced in US has something to do with international agriculture research system. Almost majority of the varieties have the germplasms from CGIAR or from other national agriculture research system in Asia and Africa, particularly in Asia. Now, obviously, this investment will benefit US consumers' health and nutrition. So US consumers benefit from foreign aid supporting the search for solution for soil and plant-borne toxins, and estimated up to $2.3 billion lost every year because of these toxins. And now, as you might know, that there is a big problem in many Asian countries, that's African swine fever. So US invested quite a bit with Africans, try to stop that disease, try to stop to come to US, come to many other countries. So that investment will also have very high returns. Now the nutrition, obviously, as you know, if we support it's a national agriculture research system in developing countries, they will produce more and diverse fruits, vegetables, so the U.S. consumers will be able to consume very diverse tropical fruit and off-season vegetables and fruits. So the nutrition status has improved quite a bit. Then greater global and U.S. security, as I already said, because of that investment, higher economic growth, lower poverty, better nutrition, that will reduce migration, reduce conflicts. We know that conflicts and migration and undernutrition are always linked. So you will see whenever there's hunger, there will be conflict. There will be migration. And through the investment, we can increase local production, local productivity, reduce hunger, reduce undernutrition in this conflict countries and zones. So looking forward, we will face even more challenges. We know that population is going to grow, and 98% of the global population growth will come from developing countries, particularly Africa. And how are we going to feed all these people? So from now to 2050, we must produce more than 50% of the food, and probably better, healthy, nutritious food. That's a huge challenge. So to sustainably feed a growing population, a food systems transformation is essential. So it's not just technology. Yes, technology is important, but the whole food system must be transformed. That can generate better jobs, better income, and obviously increase global security in Africa, in South Asia, and also in US, in Europe. And I think continued American investment in foreign agriculture will be so important, so vital to help secure a better future for the whole world. So the bottom line is, yes, recipient countries benefit from US investment in agriculture, in food security, but even US benefit quite a bit. Evidence after evidence shows that we all benefit from that investment. So let's continue to invest, maybe even to scale up the investment to make sure that in our future generation will have it's a food secured world, nutrition secured world, and towards the end of the day, the security, the human security has to be secured from that investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fan, and thank you for your leadership, your personal leadership and that of IFPRI for helping make this study a reality. We greatly appreciate that very much. Well, it took individuals to do the work, to pull all this data together, to assess it, analyze it, and to put this wonderful publication together. And I'm about to introduce the two key lead authors on this study. The first is Dr. David Crable. Dr. Crable is Professor Emeritus at The Ohio State University. Dr. Crable is Professor Emeritus from the university where his research is focused on agricultural and economic development. He is fluent in French and Swahili. He resided in Africa for a number of years, including a sabbatical year as a Fulbright scholar at Makerere University in Uganda, and more recently as Chief of Party for the Innovative Agriculture Research Institute, a USAID-funded project on human and institutional capacity building in Tanzania. He has received the International Award of Merit from the Gamma Sigma Delta Honor Society and has worked as a consultant to the World Bank, IFPRI, Reform, Rockefeller Foundation, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and other agencies. I also have the privilege of introducing Dr. Stephanie Mercier. She is Senior Policy Advisor for the Farm Journal Foundation. Dr. Mercier is a Senior Policy Advisor with the Foundation, but prior to that work with the Foundation, she served between 1997 and 2011 in the position as Chief Economist for the Democratic staff of the United States Senate Agriculture Committee. Previously, she served as a team member for the Trade Policy and Programs area of the Economic Research Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. On the Hill, she covered a wide variety of issues for the committee, among them domestic farm programs, climate change, risk management, international agricultural trade, agricultural development, and food aid policy. Dr. Mercier has a bachelor's degree in economics from Washington University in St. Louis and a PhD in agricultural economics from Iowa State University. So I'd like to invite Dr. Cabral and Dr. Mercier to please come forward. And thank you again for your outstanding work.
Thank you, Dr. Keenan, and also I would like to acknowledge all of the members of the audience and those that aren't here that have contributed one way or another to this report, especially to the BIFAD board and to various others of you that USAID and other places that have who have been involved. Let's see if we can get to the next presentation. Am I going the wrong way? Okay, all right. I think we're getting there. Okay, what Dr. Mercier and I are going to try to do is give you a picture of the report. You have a copy of the report. It is public communication. It was written primarily for policymakers. It was an attempt to translate the best research available from both the research community as well as the practice community and make it available to policymakers. So the report has three major parts. The first two parts are background, that is the inputs. What does the U.S. government invest in terms of agricultural foreign assistance? The second part is the outcomes, and Dr. Fan has focused a bit on the second part. The bulk of the report is this area that we all think is important and yet has not really been very well documented, frankly, and that is the U.S. benefits. Those of you who have worked, many of you for a lifetime in international development, believe that this part of it is important. Many of us have heard people saying this over and over again, and yet there really has not been very much documentation. So this report attempts to bring it together. First of all, now, in terms of the inputs, U.S. non-military aid expenditures. This is all U.S. non-military aid expenditures adjusted for inflation in 2017 were $33.3 billion. This is 0.17% of GDP. That is a little bit less than 1/5 of GDP and 0.87% of U.S. government expenditures, a little bit less than 1% of all U.S. government expenditures. Important information to get out there. I know from teaching this material that the general public, when they are interviewed, think that it's about 24 or 25% of the U.S. government budget. Now, this is U.S. foreign agricultural aid expenditures, again, adjusted for inflation. In 2017, $1.4 billion, 4.2%. It represents 4.2% of the previous slide, that is of non-military aid, and it's 0.04%. That is about 1/20th of 1% of U.S. government expenditure. You can see that it rose from 2001 to 2011, and that peaked during this period in 2011, and then has declined somewhat since then. Now, now we're shifting from all U.S. government agricultural aid to USAID. And what I have here is figures that were given to me by the agency, and this is for expenditures by BFS, the Bureau for Food Security, as well as other agricultural expenditures of USAID. For those of you who might be wondering, the mission expenditures come largely under bilateral programs here, and particularly for this community. And I think of particular interest to BIFAD is the expenditures in research and development. You can see they've been fairly constant over this period, totaling $142 million in 2017. Okay, so Dr. Fan focused on recipient country outcomes. At one level, you have where the inputs are, the U.S. government inputs are targeted. That is at farms, families, and institutions, and that involves technology. That involves disease control, prevention of spread of diseases, and human and institutional capacity building. Okay, changes at that level, if it's really going to have an impact on food security, as Dr. Fan emphasized, must result in transformation of agricultural and food systems. The end in mind being the development of households and economies. So U.S. benefits then, we tried to categorize the major U.S. benefits, one of them being the increased research capacity. And the direct beneficiaries there are U.S. universities and, I should add, research institutes as well. Another category of benefits then is those that farmers directly benefit from, and that is the increased U.S. agricultural productivity. Another category of benefits is the agricultural trade and investment by U.S. firms, the direct beneficiaries being U.S. companies. Another category is the jobs and the income, direct beneficiaries being workers. Another category is the greater availability of seasonal and tropical foods in the U.S., the direct beneficiaries being U.S. consumers, and then greater global stability. And of course, the whole world benefits from that, but within the U.S. in particular, it benefits U.S. residents and taxpayers. Okay, so we're going to segue now to Dr. Mercier, who's going to talk to us about, up at the top of the stack that I just showed you in the previous slide, the agricultural productivity benefits, the spillovers from those.
Thank you, David. Oops, wrong way. One more. Okay, so U.S. farmers have been the beneficiary of public sector investment in agriculture research for more than 150 years. We can date back to the establishment of a number of key sets of institutions in the United States, starting with the land grant system and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which both occurred in 1862. We had the establishment of the agricultural experiment stations under the Hatch Act in 1887, and then the Cooperative Extension Services under the Smith-Lever Act in 1914. And as a result of that investment, ag productivity has increased markedly over the last 100 years, 268% over the 48-year period. Oh, no, that's 58-year period between 1949 to 2007. You can see from the chart that total output has been going up uninterrupted over that period, and that except for a brief jump in the mid-1970s, the inputs used have actually been pretty flat. So that's a remarkable increase in productivity. More recently, oops, sorry, wrong the wrong way again, has been the introduction of U.S. investment in international ag research, which American farmers also benefit from. And that's come in really two outlets. One has been the U.S. support of the CGR system that Dr. Fong talked about. This started in the 1940s when the precursor to CIMMYT in Mexico started up, was investment working on wheat and corn. Norman Borlaug did his initial work there. and then it was established formally as CIMMYT in 1966, and then the broader CG system was established in 1971. This now encompasses CIMMYT and 14 other institutions around the world. In aggregate, there's been estimates that suggest every $1 the U.S. has provided to the CG system has returned $17 in economic returns to U.S. agriculture. By any standard, that's a pretty good return. And here are the locations of where these centers are located around the world. U.S. has IFPRI and CIMMYT, of course, in Mexico, but then also scattered around Latin America, Asia, and Africa. The other sort of channel through which the U.S. invests in international ag research is through U.S. universities. And this started in 1977, ran through 2012, support through the the Collaborative Research Support Programs, or CRSPs. These programs were subject matter specific. They included areas such as aquaculture, integrated pest management practices, soybeans and wheat, and involved partnerships between a number of U.S. universities, foreign universities, and some NGOs. A key part of that program under the CRSP system was the training of thousands of young foreign scientists who pursued advanced degrees at U.S. universities. And then in 2013, we sort of replaced the CRSP system with the Feed the Future Innovation Labs, which are a bit more focused sort of on developing that technology and then scaling it up. There are now 24 such labs that are headquartered at 15 different U.S. universities. And here's a map that shows the locations of those institutions. So that's essentially two streams of investment. We're going through the CG system and then more through the U.S. universities directly. And there are some examples which are discussed in the report of some really major returns on that investment to U.S. farmers. The first example I'd like to cite is, I think Dr. Fong mentioned briefly, is the wheat and rice productivity research that U.S. farmers have reaped huge benefits from, measured in terms of improved yields and reduced input costs from both wheat and rice. The return on U.S. investment in CIMMYT and IRRI, where they do rice research in the Philippines, generated cumulative benefits to U.S. farmers estimated at $3.4 billion to $15.6 billion between that 33-year period, 1960 to 1993. And to break that down, that means for every $100 worth of benefit to the U.S. economy in those areas, taxpayers only spent 2 cents. So that's a really good return. And that's not just, historical data. There's been a more recent study which looked at the similar sets of issues. Back in 2016, estimated that for wheat alone, the financial impact of CIMMYT research is between 140 and 180 million annually, and that represents a return benefit cost ratio between 32 and 40 to 1. Technology spillover is also really important when it comes to addressing crop and animal diseases. The economic impact of what we call avoidance technology, trying to avoid an outcome, sometimes it's difficult to estimate, so you kind of have to look at what would have been the outcome if that research hadn't been done. And so one example that we looked at was this UG99 wheat stem rust, which started spreading in Africa and then into Asia starting in 1999, has not yet come to the United States, but we are already engaged in research trying to figure out how we would address it if it did come here. And there's been some economic studies looked at what might the impact be in the United States if this disease did show up in the United States. And one study suggests that it could range from as little, and this is not a little number, between 1.5 billion if it just hit one state, for example, the state of North Dakota, up to nearly $10 billion if it's a multi-year outbreak in the wheat-producing states in the Great Plains. And this assumes that we would lose a lot of international markets because those countries don't want the risk of UG99 coming in their country. So huge benefit to the United States if, by the work we're doing now, can prevent this from becoming a problem here. And then there's similar spillover benefits to farmers who raise peanuts. The peanut, or the groundnut as it's known in much of the rest of the world, is an important staple food crop in both Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, and is the fourth most important source of edible oil in the world. Peanut research funded by USAID creates technologies and knowledge that increases the production, quality, and consumption of peanuts around the world, including in this country. This work was initiated under the CRSP system out of University of Georgia, and that continues at Georgia. They still host the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for peanut research. Many new varieties were developed by this USAID program, have been released in the United States. They have included enhanced traits such as improving the oleic oil content of the peanut, which means that it increases the shelf life, doesn't go rancid as quickly, and so that means you can keep it around longer. And then there's also been some work which has benefit U.S. peanut producers in terms of fungal disease resistance. And the other issue that's a focus of the research is aflatoxin. This is a deadly and costly threat to food safety around the world, not only for peanuts, but for corn crops around the world, and it's been a major focus of what they're doing in the peanut program. This is a natural carcinogen. It's a mold that's found in peanuts and other ag crops. It's an infrequent problem in the United States, but when it does hit, it's very costly. One such solution is to develop a peanut variety that is resistant to the mold that produces aflatoxin. That's called Aspergillus flavus. The program is also conducting research on management of insects and soil pests that exacerbate the production of this mold in the fields, so that could be helpful to U.S. farmers. And then besides the work at University of Georgia, the nutrition lab at Tufts is looking at how does aflatoxin impact childhood development among children who consume this in their diets. And the post-harvest loss lab at Purdue is looking at ways of trying to prevent aflatoxin from spreading in grain storage. A couple other benefits that are cited in the report look at grain sorghum research. There's been work undertaken at a USAID funded lab for grain sorghum that has developed varieties resistant to this pest called the sugarcane aphid, which led in 2018 to the commercial release of 19 different varieties in the United States with that particular resistance built into it. So that's beneficial to U.S. producers. Past research in this area generated benefits for those sorghum producers of almost $400 million in 1989 alone. So that's a pretty good return. And then there's also been significant research on edible beans that's has resulted in the release of commercial varieties in the United States of 40 different kinds. So these are just a couple examples of how U.S. farmers have benefited directly from U.S. investment in ag research. There are spillover benefits for other crops and livestock that can also be documented. And as David mentioned, additional benefits include the research training and hands-on experience that U.S. graduate students gain under this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm now going to carry on with some of the other benefits. The export and job benefits are really quite significant. Dr. Fan presented a little bit of this morning. So what I want to focus on here on this slide is his basic point was that the bulk of export growth has been in developing countries. What I want to focus on is the middle there. If you break down bulk commodities over the last 20 years, 77% of the growth has been of U.S. exports has been in exports to developing countries. There's actually been a decline in the exports of bulk commodities to developed countries. If you look at high-value products, 125% of the growth has been in developing countries, 27% in developed countries. So the takeaway from this is that it's very, very important to continue the economic growth in developing countries, to continue the demand for U.S. exports. And Dr. Fan had touched on the jobs, which come to about $1.2 million when you consider the direct jobs as well as the indirect jobs. In addition to exporting agricultural commodities, there's also export of U.S. agriculture-related goods, such as feed and fodder, fertilizer, agricultural chemicals, seeds, and farm machinery as well. Now, another area is the export of agricultural technology via licensing agreements. And on the right-hand side of the slide, I have a photograph of the PICS hermetic crop storage bag that I'm sure many of you know about. It was developed in the 1970s and late 1970s and the 1980s at Purdue University under the USAID-funded Bean Cowpea Crisp. And it had a long evolution. It was the initial development was funded by USAID, taking it to the commercialization and eventually the manufacturing and licensing stage then was funded by the Gates Foundation. And it is now licensed by Pix Global, which is a corporation, a for-profit corporation. Well, actually, it's a social, they call themselves a social enterprise. That is affiliated with Purdue, and it's sold annually to 3 million farmers in 58 countries. A wonderful story, and so that's also an export as well. And then processing standards, I don't have a time to tell the full story, but basically it comes down to this. If you're in a food system in the early phase of the development, for example, of animal feed production or fortification, standards have to be set. Those are tied to technology, which is tied to goods that can be exported. So the introduction of those kinds of standards also results in increased exports. Benefits in terms, U.S. benefits in terms of seasonal and tropical foods. The U.S. aid contributes to the improvement of food systems, entire food systems in developing countries that are exporting to the U.S., and so that results in improved, more hygienic, even lower priced and environmentally conserving exports of foods to the U.S. In terms of tropical and seasonal foods, nearly 100% of the coffee, cocoa, and spices consumed in the U.S. come from developing countries. And some of these commodities, coffee in particular, has benefited from investment by USAID. Vegetables, of course, during the cold season. Now, the global disease control, I think in the interest of time, I'm going to pass over this quite quickly, but it is an extremely important area. Early identification, early warning, and USAID has a number of programs, some of them directly under agriculture, some of them not so directly under agriculture, but that help contain the spread of diseases like African swine fever, like the UG99 in wheat, and so on. Okay, so I want to go on now to the global and national security benefits. Reasons for concern about global stability, of course, are humanitarian. That's extremely important for many of us who have worked in this area. Perhaps the humanitarian motivation has been the primary one, but there's also an economic motive as well. A recent study done by the United Nations and the World Bank jointly concluded that the international community saves $16 in crisis response and reconstruction expenditures for every dollar spent on conflict prevention measures. The relationship between food security and global security, the presentations this morning did it far better than what I can in just a few seconds here. It's a complicated relationship. As one of the speakers said, we know that whenever there's a conflict, food security is at stake. Does food security cause conflict? Sometimes, but it's not the only cause of insecurity. But what we do know is that food security is closely related to a number of the other factors that in and of themselves then drive conflict. For example, economic grievance. If people are deprived of food over a long period of time, that leads to a sense of grievance, and often if certain groups are involved, they may feel particularly aggrieved. Economic growth that improves income and material well-being of a large share of the population is generally stabilizing, both economically and politically. And over the past decade, most published empirical studies on foreign aid and economic growth have found that aid has a positive impact on economic growth, but with a lag. Now, that's in contrast to many studies that were done in the previous decade that were finding there was little relationship. And the more recent studies find that, yes, there is an impact, but with a considerable lag. The implication, of course, one of the implications is that it requires a long planning horizon, and we have to be willing to be there for the long haul. Growth-inducing foreign aid also may reduce international migration. There are not that many studies in this issue, and there have been conflicting results. But a recent study, a very impressive study of 141 countries over a longer period of time, finds that foreign aid does reduce international migration, but only after 11 or more years. Another very interesting recent study of 103 countries over a relatively long period of time, 15 years, finds that rural development aid reduces international migration, but urban development aid does not reduce international migration. It doesn't increase it, but it doesn't reduce it. Okay, so agricultural development assistance creates opportunities for the U.S. to build relationships in developing countries before global crises occur. One of the persons I interviewed had a very worthwhile one-liner. She said, "You cannot surge trust. You might be able to surge troops on the battlefield, but you can't surge trust." So the long-term relationships that are built by universities, research institutes, and many of the things that USAID, many of the U.S. partners that USAID funds, contribute to building that trust. Long-term investment is essential. And so this report emphasizes that agriculture is a driver of broad-based economic growth in low-income countries, and this broad-based growth builds resiliency in the recipient countries and in regions of the world. The report is available online. It is, the embargo is off now, and it is available to the public online, and also some shorter versions of it. So, back to the chair.
Dr. Crable, Dr. Mercier, thank you so much for that overview and for the hard work, and under a lot of time constraints, I might add, to be able to have this publication available to all of you here today for this occasion at the World Food Prize meetings. So with that, we've come to the time for any public comments or questions that anyone may have. And if any of those who are online viewing this, if they want to send their question in to Devin Ferguson, she'll be glad to pass it on. But I'll open the floor for any comments or questions that anyone may have.
Hi, Julie Howard from CSIS, and congratulations to the authors and BIFAD on this report. This wasn't part of the brief for the report, but I'm wondering if you have a sense of the contribution that the U.S. makes for agricultural research relative to other countries, and then relative to the need, the need for agricultural research in developing countries. So how much is the U.S. providing? So sorry that this is probably not a question that you addressed here, but I'm kind of wondering if you have a sense of that, because it seems, in the community, we're always battling for dollars for agricultural research. And I think this will be very helpful in showing why it's so important. But the sense is that, we're still facing a kind of yawning deficit, and especially considering, the dramatic significant transformation of agricultural systems that lie in front of us to meet nutrition and environmental challenges.
So you're right, Julie, in that this wasn't really tackled in this report, but I know that U.S. provides the single largest contribution to the CG system. About 24%, I think, is the share. And so that's the CG side. Certainly there's room for gain there, but we are, a top producer among donor countries there. Within the United States and our own budget, I definitely think there's room for improvement. I mean, and we did Farm Journal Foundation did a policy brief on this issue a couple years ago. The United States, in aggregate, its public sector research has now fallen behind China in terms of annual expenditures, and so we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are, in some respects, resting on our laurels a bit. So there is need for more, and I think Shenggen had this figure in his presentation. We need to increase our ag production at least 50% in order to feed that 10 billion global population in 2050, and we're not investing enough to get to that point at this juncture, in my opinion.
I would just respond by saying that I think there really is a need for an estimate of what the needs are. I personally haven't seen anything like that in quite a while. There's been a lot of focus, of course, on the SDGs, which are important. Agriculture is a part of that, but I think that whole global conversation has really not lifted up agriculture to the extent that it needs to be. What really should be the investment? And if you look at, I mean, when we talk about resiliency and long-term ability to grow and to cope with a variety of shocks, it's really all about capacity building, and there the needs are enormous. I mean, if you look at the institutions that actually deliver the goods and services in agriculture, enormous underfunding. When you look at universities, research institutes, extension, the whole finance, the whole apparatus. There is need to do what you're talking about, and that is estimate what would be required.
Yeah, and I'd like to pitch in that, you know, the folks who do the gap report every year, and they'll be rolling out their report tomorrow. At least the ones that I've attended have shown that we are not reaching the productivity growth rate that we need to in order to feed those 10 billion people at that point. So documented evidence there that we need to be talking about more.
Yes.
Mike Lesnick, Meridian Institute. Well, first, congratulations on the report. I think a very welcome report. The payback on agriculture, pretty impressive ratios. So maybe a couple of questions around that for the authors to the extent you can comment. One, a surprise or not a surprise? Two, do you think this indicates this can be plumbed even more? One can explore that even further, given attitudes in the country might be beneficial, maybe not. Maybe it's not doable. I guess third, do you think there's anything attributable to that? Is because U.S. investments in agriculture tend to emphasize productivity or technology, or any instinct about that? Again, thanks for your good work.
Yeah, well, we've known for quite some time that you always have very strong returns on investing in things like research and extension. So that's known. You know, the exact numbers, and of course the first figure that I cited was from work that Phil Pardee and others did back in 1996. So we didn't do any of our own research. We're just citing other existing studies there. So that Pardee's research has been around for a long time, and other folks are doing the work. To me, returns that high suggest that we are underinvesting, because there's a lot of good research that could be done that's simply not being funded.
And I would add by saying that in any political environment, the message that investment is not a zero-sum game, I think, is important. And I think that's really the key message here. It's not a zero-sum game. We end up the report saying everybody benefits from it.
Yes, please.
My name is Sylvain Roy with CNFA. First of all, I'm very pleased with the result of this study. I think it's very important for us that involve in international development to promote the result of this study and to update it time to time. So it's a very important tool. One maybe missing element, I'm not so sure, is the citizen diplomacy aspect. By doing international development, investing U.S. taxpayer money, we have a return. Now we have this indication. But we have we get more than that. And citizen diplomacy is very important. An example, USAID, for more than 2 decades, funds the farmer-to-farmer program. Every year, we deploy hundreds of American volunteers to the field. The result of that is an eye-opener, understanding the differences in culture. And when the American volunteers are back here in the US, they know much better about the importance of international development, difference in culture, and are more inclined to continue investing in developing foreign aids.
Good point. Excellent point. One of the things we tried to do in writing the report was we tried to go with where we could find evidence. Now, Farmer to Farmer has probably done a better job than a lot of other programs have, at least in telling the story about how it benefits people. But frankly, I have to say, as a researcher for many years, I was astounded at how little solid evidence there was. And I can also say, as a former chief of party of a major USAID project, it was not in our indicators to report our impact in the US. That was not one of our indicators. And so there is really a gap there. If you look at the early BIFAD, if you look at the BIFAD legislation, I think it was the 1975 amendment to the U.S. Foreign Assistance Act that created BIFAD. It's very clear that U.S. agricultural foreign assistance and Title 12 focuses specifically on agriculture and food security, is supposed to generate dual benefits to the recipient countries and to the U.S. And yet that mission of documenting the impact to the U.S. is not really a formal part of our reporting. So I guess what I would say to you is, for your program and others, gather the data and tell the stories, but more specifically, come up with some quantitative indicators of impact that will help get the story out.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more research out there looking at the returns on research. There are some that look on the returns to both research and extension, but there aren't too many that just look at extension alone. And for that kind of analysis, you need hard data, and David is right. There are a lot of people in our profession who would love to work with that, because I'm a huge fan of Farmer to Farmer. I have been ever since I learned about it when I worked on the Ag Committee and helped to try to expand funding for it. So I think that some of the benefits are really intangible. I work with a couple of farmers who've been involved with it, and the effect on the American volunteers is profound, but it's very difficult to quantify what that means. So with a program like Farmer to Farmer, there are tangible benefits, and I know that there are some documentation of, additional productivity gained under those projects, and maybe we could work with that, but a lot of it you just simply can't capture with a single number.
Please.
Yeah, my name is Saskia Hendricks, Livestock Systems Innovation Lab at the University of Florida. So first of all, thank you very much for the report. We were anxiously waiting this report, so glad it's out. And I would like to know perhaps what USAID and BIFAD is planning in terms of sharing the findings, and if we as Innovation Labs can also contribute to that effort, because obviously it's also in our interest to get the word out and to have that. And I take I will definitely share with our colleagues. We try to document a lot. Obviously, USAID M&E systems are very rigorous in capturing different things. We also do success stories, but I also I realize that we can always do better. So this will probably maybe also help us think slightly different and reflect on what we are doing and how we can. So please, if you're interested in working with us, we are definitely interested also in working with you. So
I'll respond to that on behalf of the board. I know Thursday of this week, the Innovation Labs are having your session, and Dr. Crable and I guess Dr. Mercier will be there to talk more about this study at the Innovation Lab. Are you going to be there? You're not?
I didn't know about it.
Oh, well, it is. Well, you're invited.
I will definitely be there.
You're invited. Dr. Crable will be there for sure, and we'd love to have you there, Stephanie. But yes, we want to highlight this and get this message out widely. We had lunch today with Administrator Green, and he and I talked about, and we've had envisioned to doing this, some event on Capitol Hill where we can invite members of both House and Senate Ag committees, the Foreign Relations committees and their staffs to come and let us present this and give all of them copies of this. We want to get a copy to every, as you heard the administrator, to every single member of Congress. You know, I served and worked with Dr. Mercier on the Senate Ag Committee back many years ago, and worked for Senator Thad Cochran. And he was a strong advocate for working abroad. He understood the importance of helping other countries, i.e. the Cochrane Fellowship Program was one thing he sponsored and created. But you have members of Congress on both House and Senate Ag Committees who are very sympathetic to helping provide funding and appropriations and foreign affairs. But they go home and they hear from constituents who want them to, you know, cut the budget and reduce spending. And why in the world are you spending money on these foreign countries over there, you know, these developing countries? What's that ever going to do for us? Why are you spending all these billions of dollars or millions of dollars? Well, there's a reason why, and it's highlighted in this study. And the direct benefits back to our farmers and to our taxpayers and to our consumers and for our national security is very real. Sometimes you just have to, you know, boil it down and put it where people can understand. And that's what this whole purpose of this study is about. And that's why I'm so excited about it. We've already put op-eds out on this, and we intend as a board to highly publicize this and work with USAID to get the word out, to help those who want to help us. And it's interesting as I go on this line, you know, back, I can remember years ago, Stephanie, when we had major agricultural commodity organizations who were opposed to the U.S. spending money and helping developing countries for fear that they will be competitors with U.S. farmers. But I think the study shows that that is not the case. And what we're doing is helping countries help themselves and become customers of the United States agricultural products. So there are huge tangible benefits that are highlighted here that we're very proud to share.
I'd like to add, Mark. So Farm Journal Foundation, one of our core platforms is to bring farmers in from key states and talk to their members of Congress about global food security. This report will be really helpful in helping provide concrete examples of the benefits that our taxpayers, our consumers, our farmers derive from these programs. You mentioned there's a piece of legislation, and I actually worked with Julie on years ago, the Bumpers Amendment from 1985. If I remember my history correctly, American Soybean Association was the driving force behind that. ASA has done complete 180. They are now among the strongest advocates in the farm community, and they themselves have their own nonprofit foundation that engages in ag development. So the farming community are starting to understand how important this is to their members as well. But this will help them as well.
Yep. Okay, please. I'm getting close. I see another hand back here. You may want to go ahead.
I think we all agree that this is a tremendous accomplishment. It's a very rosy report. So my question is about your other reflections in the course of doing this. What were some of the inhibitors, if you can think of them? Is this louder? Is this better? Yeah. What were some of the possible inhibitors for having even more impact? And I say that because those of us who live in the system, along with you, have recognized increasing overhead institutional costs in the last 10, 15 years, much heavier bureaucratic reporting requirements. So just a realist, were there inhibitors to having even more value per dollar? But excellent work.
Well, I mean, I think maybe when this process started, there was a hope that we could have a really rigorous estimate of the impact of individual investments. But we quickly realized that was not realistic because you can't untangle so many of the things that are going on in developing countries. That, U.S. may have an investment at a university, but also so does BIFAD, and so does other institutions, other donors, that you have to try to figure out how to untangle that. And then because we're talking about ag research and development, it's a really, really long time period involved in this. I mean, some of the stuff that I looked at were investments that we started making in countries in the 1960s and 70s. So teasing that out and trying to quantify that. So a lot of what we did in this report is qualitative in a lot of respects. And I'd love I'm still thinking about what are better ways where we can be a little more rigorous. We have the export multiplier numbers, but that's sort of generally applies to all exports, whether or not they're necessarily generated through what we do. So more could be done, and I hope we keep thinking about it, but I think this is a solid report nonetheless.
It is. Well, I wish we could take more questions, but I've been given the cut sign, so we're past overtime. We're gonna take a short 10-minute break. We're gonna reconvene. We've got a wonderful award ceremony following this. But let's extend our congratulations to Dr. Crable and Dr. Mercier one more time. Thank you. See you back in 10 minutes. Again, thank you very much for bailing us out. Thank you so much for everything.
Oh, it's the same time, okay. Okay. Yeah. That's why I'm not, we have our own side event. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, thanks, yeah, okay.
And tried to sort out the ones that were valid.
Yeah, basically, on the notion that maybe body by commodity, but in general, the rates of return were between 30% and about 100%, depending on the commodity. And I think 40%, 50% might have been, as I recall, sort of the median rate of return. Yeah. But here we're talking about 40 to 1, which is like 4,000 and or 4,000% rate of return. To me, there's a problem. Part of the difference, I think, it's a valid question. I think part of the difference for to me is these benefits
Yes, it's between 32 to 1 and 40 to 3.
It could be problematic. And it might be weird. It's like an order that couple of magnitudes. And I've seen that number as well. And I know that even in the state university, we would get a noise in the economic we can't get that number.
study in particular that we simply didn't do, so, because it was done by, and I just felt as though it was not.
Maybe it's some of that blood right now, but it is great. I think that part E report was really, really good. And, you know, and they covered every possibility. Another thing I want to tell you real quick. Even, okay, 30 years ago, we did the same study. And at that time, like, the presentation for BIFAD and resources for the future lab, Cadbury, horrible. Not done, but no. He's professor at, yeah, at Smith. Okay, so Rob did a letter. I was on the committee. Well, there are lots of us. And actually, USAID refused to participate. For whatever reason, I don't know, didn't participate at all in the research. They had very heavy industry. We came out with very much the same kinds of industry. Like I remember Whitney McMillan, Target, was on our committee and came out emphatically that this is good for U.S. industry or U.S. efforts to invest in agricultural research and activities. The agencies still are afraid of Congress and still afraid of what numbers it is. And push back even today. You go and try to put a big program you get a dynamite and it's a really enormous pushback. So did you run across that at all? That there's still a lot of pushback in the agency? Oh, in the especially with USDA.
Right now, that's my PA.
Oops. Where's my guy? Come on. Hello. What is happening? Where is happening? Hmm. Why is this? What is going on? Mm. Oh, is this a touchscreen? Please, for touchscreen. Oh, great, thank you.
Are we ready? Okay, I think we're going to reconvene, everyone. We'll call our BIFAD meeting back into session. We're going to end our day on a very positive note. This is the BIFAD Annual Awards Ceremony. And I'm going to turn the proceedings over to manage the awards program to one of our board members, Dr. Brady Deaton. He is Chancellor Emeritus of the University of Missouri. He chaired the 2019 BIFAD Award Selection Committee. Dr. Brady Deaton, he served as Chancellor and Chief Executive Officer of the University of Missouri from 2004 until 2013, with many years of service and experience in higher education, including senior positions at the University of Missouri since 1989. Dr. Deaton served 12 years at Virginia Tech, the last 4 as Associate Director of the Office of International Development. Dr. Deaton holds a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics, an MA in diplomacy and international commerce from University of Kentucky. He also earned a Master's of Science and a PhD in agricultural economics from the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Brady Deaton.
Mark, thanks very much. And this is a real time of celebration for BIFAD, and we've been celebrating knowledge, you might say, all day today, and I think this last session showed how beneficial that is to our society. And I'm very pleased to have chaired the awards committee of BIFAD. This year, it's the first time I did it, and I just wish everyone could do it because you're very inspired in this process, and you feel so good about the work that USAID is sponsoring and with the innovation labs around our universities, and indeed with universities around the world and with institutions in other parts of the world. The BIFAD Awards began were reignited, you might say, in 2012. Earlier in the period of BIFAD, awards were given. When we met with the Innovation Lab leaders in 2012, they suggested that we go back and recognize the tremendous work that is going on, the benefits of which you've been hearing today and really all day today. So we did that, and it's been just an inspiring opportunity for us to look at the excellence that's being created with the work that you're doing. These awards for scientific excellence are for the individuals working with the Feed the Future Innovation Labs. And we recognize, the awards committee recognizes individual researchers or research teams for their significant achievement originating from work performed under the USAID program, Feed the Future Innovation Labs. 2 awards are given annually, one for an individual researcher or a team of researchers, and one for a student researcher. Now, the principal criteria for the award are 1, demonstrated scientific and technical merit of the research, 2, relevance of that research to developing country, national, or regional agricultural research priorities, 3, the potential for the research to have a broader impact at scale that contributes to improvements in developing country food security, nutrition, resilience, and inclusive sustainable agriculture-led economic growth. And 4, evidence of commitment to inclusive development and local capacity development. Now, those 4 criteria were considered by a group of peer scientists who evaluated the nominees by the Innovation Labs for these awards in both categories. And let me say we avoided any conflict of interest with members of the selection criteria. And I can report, as a member of that selection team, I can report for all of them in saying that you would be inspired if you had the opportunity to review all of these research projects that were nominated. They were all winners in every sense of the word. And everyone that knows of the nominees should recognize just how absolutely outstanding they were. And the competition was very, very tight. And we're, as a result, just proud of our opportunity to recognize the excellence that we see here. So this year, the board is pleased to announce that the 2019 BIFAD Awards for Scientific Excellence of a senior researcher or research team in a Feed the Future Innovation Lab goes to a group from Texas A&M University associated with the Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation. Those individuals are Dr. Jihun Dile, and I would ask them if they would stand as I call their name. Then I'm going to announce them, we'll give them applause, and then they will have 10 minutes to present their research to you. So for this senior group of researchers, Dr. Jihun Dile, Dr. Abiyu, Dr. Abiyu Warglu, and Dr. Jean-Claude Bizimana. These three individuals represent the small irrigation project at the Innovation Lab at Texas A&M University. I welcome you and invite you to the podium to share with us the research that has led to this recognition. Plaques for each of the individuals, so we can give those at this time. And Dr. Warglu? Yes. Congratulations. Thank you. Dr. Dile, Yehun Dile, congratulations. Dr. Jean-Claude Bizimana, congratulations.
We really appreciate selecting us for this prestigious award. So as Doctor was mentioning, this is a project at Texas A&M University, and we are part of the Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation, which was led by Dr. Kirk, and now which is led by Dr. Nicole Lifor. So the project is in 3 countries, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Tanzania. It was a 5-year project, and now it is extended for another 5 years, and we have been in this project for a couple of years. So the project has 4 components. The first component was household survey to look the adoption of small-scale irrigation. The other component was demand-driven research, which is done by partners in Ethiopia, Ghana, and Tanzania. And the third component was integrated decision support system to look at the impact of those small-scale irrigation, where our team has been actively working on the project. And the fourth component is the capacity building aspect of it. I will be giving you an overview of the integrated decision support system, and then my colleague will follow on. So our research, we have been seeing a lot of research today, and that was mainly on socioeconomic aspects of the conflict and related aspects. But the research that we have been dealing was a multidisciplinary research which encompasses both natural resources and social science fields to address the impacts of small-scale irrigation on big research questions like agricultural production, environmental sustainability, and household income and nutrition. And we have been trying to address these big research questions using models. And the models that we have been using was like SWOT model. SWOT is Soil and Water Assessment Tool. It is a large-scale model, a biophysical model, which helps to see the impact of small-scale irrigation at watershed or a national level. And there is the APEX model, Agricultural Policy Environment Extender model. It is, again, a biophysical model, but it looks the impact of farming systems at a field scale, mainly farming system on agricultural production. And FarmSim is farm simulation model. It is a socio-economic model and looking at the impact of irrigation at a household level. So these three models exchange data and try to assess the impact of small-scale irrigation across scales, from household into the watershed and into the national level. So the findings of this IDSS research was highly demanded by the national government, the Ethiopian government, Ghana and Tanzania, for planning, monitoring, and program design. For example, the figure that you see in the left is land suitability analysis. This land suitability analysis uses different data, like the soil data, the land use data, climate data, socioeconomic data, like access to market, road network. Different factors were factored in, weighed in, and then the suitable areas for small-scale irrigation were identified, for example, in Ethiopia case. So the most green area here shows the high potential areas for small-scale irrigation in Ethiopia. So part of the central part of the country, the northern part of the country, which is highly green, is highly suitable for small-scale irrigation in Ethiopia. And this data was highly demanded by the Development Bank of Ethiopia. They were interested to have such type of outputs to determine investment allocations, giving loans for farmers and small enterprises in Ethiopia, and we have been providing this data for them for their decision. And the figure in the right is an output from the IDSS model, the SWOT model, and that is the water resources. There is green water resource, the surface runoff, the groundwater recharge, and also the soil water in the soil moisture, which is called green water. And as you can see in the map, the western part of the country in Ethiopia has a water resources potential which is more than 750 millimeters. It is too big to cultivate a crop of high production. And this data was also highly demanded by the Ethiopian River Basin Authority, the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency. They have been contacting us, and we were providing these outputs to those institutions. And from our analysis, we used biophysical models, we used agent-based models, and we assessed the potential for scaling small-scale irrigation in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia, Ghana, and Tanzania. Even if we were featuring the outputs for Ethiopia, the same work was done for the other two countries. So Ethiopia has a high potential. Almost 1 million hectares of land is suitable for small-scale irrigation, benefiting up to 5.8 million people in Ethiopia. And the net profit from the small-scale irrigation is about 2.6 million USD for the smallholder farmers. And that potential is located mainly in the northern part of Ethiopia and in the Rift Valley Basin. When it comes to regions, Amhara region, Oromia, and southern region has a high potential for small-scale irrigation. Ghana is a small country. It is 1/4 of Ethiopia, but still for that country, the potential is high. It is about 115,000 hectares of land is suitable for small-scale irrigation, and about 700,000 people, smallholder farmers, will benefit from that small-scale irrigation. And the economic return is up to 285 million USD. And the potential when it comes to Ghana is located mainly in the northern region of the country. Tanzania is the same size as Ethiopia. It's a big country, Tanzania as well, but the potential is a little bit less than Ethiopia because there is a lot of protected land in Tanzania for tourism and other purposes. Because of that, the potential is a little bit less. And also Tanzania is not as dense as Ethiopia, so about 3 million people will be benefited from small-scale irrigation, generating up to 781 million USD. And that potential for small-scale irrigation is located in different parts of the country. So there is a huge potential. When we look in these three countries, we can imagine that there is a high potential in general in sub-Saharan Africa. The rest of the presentations, my friend Abiyu will follow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the acknowledgement, and I'll continue the presentation. So after determining the potential land suitable for irrigation, and also after identifying the resource available in terms of surface runoff and shallow groundwater recharge, the next thing that we did was estimating the potential area for adaptation of small-scale irrigation. So we overlay some of the products that we have estimated the potential land suitable for irrigation. We did it with multi-criteria evaluation that you have seen in the previous slide, and also using the SWOT, the biophysical model, we have estimated the surface runoff potential and also the shallow groundwater potential. Then we overlay the other third factor, which is socioeconomic data that represents access to market in terms of population density and also price and also access to roads. Then finally we come up with this probability of adaptation. This is very important information for the Ministry of Agriculture, also for the Ministry of Water Resources in Ethiopia, and also that for the Development Bank of Ethiopia, so that they can prioritize investment in different parts of Ethiopia, and also Ghana and Tanzania. On top of that, we have also estimated the water scarcity with the assumption that 50% of these, 50% of the water would be environmental flow, and we have determined also the probability of water scarcity, so that even though we can upscale this small-scale irrigation, there will be some kind of water scarcity, and then this investment has to be done cautiously. And the other thing that we did under this innovation lab is the capacity building, and we have tried to institutionalize IDSS in different centers, such as in the universities. For example, we have given this IDSS many universities in Bahar Dar, that is in Ethiopia, also in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam University, also Mandela University in Tanzania. They have included the IDSS into their curriculums. And Bahar Dar University in Ethiopia have also started a graduate program called Irrigation because of the support that they get from the IDSS team. And many government institutes are used the IDSS tool for the planning and evaluation, such as Development Bank of Ethiopia is very much interested to prioritize investment using the irrigation area suitability maps, and also basin authorities in Ethiopia are also very much interested on the tools. Some institutes are very interested on the outputs, and some of those institutes are very much interested on our tools. And also the CG systems like Innovation, like International Water Management Institute, International Livestock Research Institute are also partners of the Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation, and they are very much interested on the IDSS tools, such as the Soil and Water Assessment tool, or also Agricultural Policy Environmental Extender tool to do environmental analysis, and also for design and evaluation. And as part of this innovation lab for small-scale irrigation, we also provide capacity building to men and women, young and mid-career scientists, so that they can use the IDSS tool to evaluate the impact of agricultural management practices on production, environmental sustainability, household income, and nutrition. And we provide this training in Ethiopia, Ghana, and Tanzania, a short-term training. That short-term training will take 5 days, and we use local data in Ghana, and Tanzania, and Ethiopia. We give one time a year minimum. Sometimes we give this training 2 times a year, and that will attract 50 to 70 students, researchers, and also people from private companies. And in this short-term training, we have trained more than 700 people. And also we have a long-term training that we provided in Texas A&M. We invite people from Ethiopia, Ghana, and Tanzania, and we give a training for a minimum of two months up to 3 months, so that they will get intensive training on the IDSCS tools, and they will become our ambassadors of Innovation Lab for Small Scale Irrigation, and also ambassador for IDSCS tool. And we also give training, graduate program training. This is Dr. Teddy. He have already graduated through the using the IDSCS tools to evaluate the impact of conservation agriculture practices on production, environmental sustainability, household income, and nutrition. And also, on top of that, we give training on-farm training to the farmers, teaching them how to do water management, fertilizer management, in general, agricultural input management practices. With that, I will invite my colleague for the rest of the presentation.
So for scientific community, I'm going to talk about scientific community validating the approaches and the tool we use. So as any research, since our activities are research-based, validating our method and tools are very important, especially to establish establish credibility for the people who are going to use those tools. So method and result have been validated, especially through the rigorous peer review process as is done for the publication. So about 35 papers have been published, and most of those are on the individual tools method or approach that make up the integrated decision support system. And a few of those papers are properly on, exclusively on the integrated approach itself. And also the students from our host countries, partner institution in our host countries, have been using this tool for their research and thesis, and several of them have been awarded graduate degree in those host countries, and the publication are available freely for the public. Research results are providing also the foundation for the road to self-reliance. That is our goal, as it has been said before us, to help those farmers to be self-reliant. So from the set out, the farmers have been the center of our research. So the research started with the farmer, the research should end with the farmers, if I can say that. So this is to assure sustainability as they are involved in most of, in all the field studies for different reasons. First of all, it's for better data collection. Also, it's for demonstration so that they can see exactly what is happening in their farms. And also, it's for the capacity building as they can definitely see what is going what is happening with this field research, the challenges and the opportunities. Here, there's a picture of, we picked the picture of a solar pump. The solar pump, this is in Ethiopia. The solar pump is definitely on the rise. Is not widely yet adopted by several farmers, but it's what we think it's a tool for the future for several reasons. It has some advantages compared to other, what I can call the traditional irrigation tool, like the manual-based tool, like rope and washer pump, or the motor-based tool, like the motor pump. So the solar pump presents some advantages for that. It's a renewable energy that can be accessible for smallholder farmers, and since they irrigate small plot of in their field, so the solar pump can do a better job. Also, it does not require a lot of maintenance, so the maintenance costs are very low. The initial issue is the cost of the tool. The cost of the tool is still a little bit high compared to what the farmers can afford right now. But with, I think, through the different conference we went to, there are so many private sector people that have tried to, to reduce the cost of the tool and hoping that it can be accessible to farmers. Also, very recently, the government of Ethiopia enacted a law that provide tax exemption for the agriculture equipment tool. So those who are involved in importing those tools, they have a 100% tax exemption. So which is very, very encouraging in terms of the road to adopting this agriculture tool. So definitely the farmers should lead the way, as it's written here, and this research is helping to provide a roadmap for that. So before finishing, we'd like to thank, as my colleague did, the BIFAD for recognizing us. It's a huge honor for us, and it's an encouragement for future work. And very particularly, we'd like to thank the USAID and the American people for the financial support for this research, because without that, we wouldn't have accomplished much in terms of this. And also our senior leadership, we cannot forget about them, because they've been really guiding us in different ways in strategic and scientific support for that. And also the last but not least, several farmers, extension workers, government workers, who have worked with us in this journey and for our future work. So we'd like to thank all of them. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much. You certainly demonstrated the criteria that was used to select this Outstanding Research Award, and we appreciate all that you have done and wish you the very best as we look into the future. I have a feeling we're going to hear more from these individuals in the future, and we also congratulate the Innovation Lab at Texas A&M University. So thank you for all you've done. The board is proud to announce this year's winner of the 2019 Student Researcher Award, and that is an individual associated with the Livestock Systems Lab at the University of Florida, Jean-Baptiste Ndahetouye. Jean-Baptiste's research is on milk production practices, udder health, and their impact on milk quality, safety, and processability in Rwanda. This has informed the development of training materials for farmers, milk middlemen, paraveterinarians, and opinion leaders in the communities, as well as the National Mastitis Control Program. Ndahetouye became the principal investigator on the project at the lab, all while pursuing his PhD at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Jean-Baptiste, not yet doctor, but on his way, Ndahetouye, on this year's winner of the Student Award. Welcome.
Thank you very much for BIFAD for this award. And as I said, my name is Ndaitue Jean-Baptiste. I'm a PhD student at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and at the same time, I'm a lecturer at the University of Rwanda. And we received this grant from Livestock Innovation Lab, University of Florida, to carry out this project of milk production practices, other health, and impact on milk quality, safety, and processability in Rwanda. We are a group of researchers. Some are located in Rwanda, and others are located in Sweden. And the setup was we had different expertise to complement the required needs to accomplish the project objectives. Since 2006, government of Rwanda has been importing exotic cow and distributing these cows to poor families in a program known as Girinka. And this was in order that the population meets nutrition and food security needs through milk consumption. However, the dairy cows suffer from a disease known as mastitis, and mastitis is a disease that is characterized by inflammation of mammary gland due to different kind of bacteria. And this disease leads to lowering milk yield. It affects milk quality, it affects milk safety, and therefore affects livelihood of the farmer as well as their income. So the objective of our project was to characterize the disease in terms of prevalence, causative pathogens, risk factors in small dairy holders linked to milk collection centers in Rwanda. And another objective was to build really capacity of key actors in the chain from farm to milk collection centers. So the dairy chain in Rwanda is set up in such a way that dairy farmer aggregate their milk to a collection point. Then the milk is forwarded to what we call milk collection center, and where it is collectively cooled. And that's where milk can be forwarded to processors, to raw milk sellers, and so on. At this center, milk quality is critical because milk from farmers can be rejected due to poor quality. And as I said earlier, mastitis affects milk quality, and we wanted to study the disease with the overarching goal that lowering the disease will improve milk quality and will improve income generation by the farmer through the reduction of rejection of their milk at this collection point. The way we work with the Livestock Innovation Lab, when I started my PhD, I initially intended to focus on one region, but when we received a grant from Livestock Innovation Lab, we were able to include 4 more regions in the study, and we were able also to include the component of capacity building. So we trained 2 master's students in the project, and we trained also key actors in the dairy value chain in Rwanda. So we are grateful for the funding we received from USAID through Livestock Innovation Lab. So when we studied the disease, we found that the disease is highly prevalent in cows. Range of prevalence was from about 48 to 82. That means like almost minimum 1 cow in 2 will have the disease.
And in some cases, 8 cow in 10 would have the disease. So we really needed to study to lower this disease and with overarching goal to improve milk quality and income generated by farmer through selling the milk. We studied the pathogen causing the disease because these pathogens vary according to regions, and we found out that the major pathogens are called non-aureus staphylococci and Staphylococcus aureus. And the challenging thing is that these pathogens were resisting to antibiotic that farmers use regularly. And all this information informed our trainings we carried out. And these trainings were at 2 levels. We trained farmers, milk middlemen, paraveterinarians, community opinion leaders in the first category. In the second category, we trained trainers, which included private and public veterinarians and MCC managers. And we trained them on mastitis prevention and control, proper milking routine, cow shed management, post-harvest of milk handling, and milk safety. So I would like to take a short look on the video we created while on the field. Here it is. Full screen.
Oh, there's no audio. No audio? Because I remember you said as long as it was.
Video's not in, it's not in your PowerPoint, is it? Here. Sounds turned up.
Okay. I did watch it. It is a good video.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the video. Oh, what is your sound?
All right, we will post it.
Okay.
We can post it on our website.
Yes.
Oh, hang on.
Bad.
Let's try it again.
I'm Jean-Baptiste Ndaituye. I work with the University of Rwanda, and I've been involved in this project since its conception. It is important to that bad milk doesn't reach the hands of vulnerables, including children and women. We believe a good control will lead up to decrease of the prevalence of the disease and will enhance milk quality, and ultimately when the udder of the cow is healthy, it produces more milk. Yeah, I would say healthier milk is a very important impact on nutrition of the children and women. When we measured the udder infection using California mastitis test, a simple test that tests each udder of the cow. Really, farmers were excited about seeing the result, seeing the status of the udder of their cow. The test is visual. Farmers are able to see the status of their dairy cow in terms of the udder health, and they are excited to take the course of action of the control of the disease. And now farmers are getting more money from their milk, and farmers are reporting that they have started now implementing necessary changes to control udder infection, and they are cleaning their cow shed more frequently. They are cleaning their hands before milking, and that has resulted in a better quality of the milk. And such milk, such healthier milk is a great benefit for the kids that drink the milk, and overall the consumer that drink the milk from such cows. And I'm glad about it as well.
Is it this one? No, other one.
Good morning. I hope you're having an amazing day. It's Mark Weens. I'm in the beautiful city of Kigali, Rwanda. And today...
Is that where you were?
Yeah, the link is right.
Okay, so let's
Yeah, it's just to acknowledge the help we got from Livestock Innovation Lab, and yeah, they also thank BIFAD for the award, and I will end up the presentation here. Thank you very much.
Well, I think you'll agree with me. Those were two very exciting presentations with a little drama here at the end. So congratulations again. Let's give them both a big round of applause. And to the innovation labs at Florida and Texas A&M, those are wonderful examples of the kind of collaboration that USAID has with scientists in those institutions, reaching out to the world. And I think you can see the kind of tremendous impact that this research is having already, and will have even more so in the future. We will continue this kind of recognition program. We think it's very important also to have this here at the World Food Prize, where you can see food productivity and impact taking place in real time and projecting it into the future. So we will be looking ahead. I would ask that all the innovation labs take a hard look at what they're doing, and we welcome nominees, and we're going to be trying to move this forward. It's a lot of work to put these dossiers together that we review each year, but this group has done just a tremendous job, and we're so very grateful for it. So with that, thank you all very much, and again, congratulations.
Dr. Deaton, again, thank you for your leadership, chairing the selection committee. You did an outstanding job, you and the committee, and I also want to extend again my heartfelt congratulations to all the recipients. Congratulations. Well, this has been a really good day for BIFAD. We started out this morning and we covered a very important topic earlier today on conflicted areas, and had a wonderful meeting with the administrator, and he was extremely pleased about our meetings this morning and what we were able to do this afternoon, and rolling out this wonderful benefit study that we've been able to celebrate, and again now to end it on a high note with these wonderful award recipients. I want to point out and say thank you to Susan Johnson and Devin Ferguson with APOU for their outstanding work in helping organize all of this, coordinate these activities, and of course Dr. Claire Cohen and her involvement and leadership and partnership with the board as a liaison between us and the administrator. Dr. Cohen, thank you for your leadership and all that you do. So with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.